every phase, we kind of discover a few different items that have cheeky, unintended uses that we can use to kind of cheese or get away from dealing with some mechanics on some bosses. They might make some bosses easier, or they might even just allow us to ignore the mechanics in general. So today I'm going to go over the top 7 items that we can use, or things that are kind of forgotten about and can be utilized within these new raids, Mount Hyjal and Black Temple. Now, of course, if you want to know more about these raids or more about the game in general, make sure to like and subscribe, or come and check me out live on twitch.tv/Sarthe. Anyways, let's dive right in. Now, the first item we're going to be looking at is something I've talked about quite a bit in my podcast with my buddy Crix, but this is going to be the Arcane Bomb. Arcane Bombs are explosives from the classic era that were very expensive back in the day because they actually required an Arcanite bar. But today they are much easier to make, although there is actually one barrier to entry. The actual formula for these is selling on the auction house for like 2,000 gold right now. So you have to find someone that can make these for you. Anyways, these bombs are going to be used because they actually put a 5-second silence on all targets hit by it. Now, in Mount Hyjal, there are a ton of times where mobs aren't stacked up really well, especially if it's the necromancers. And if these guys hit your tanks with their shadow bolts, they can easily instantly kill your tank. So in any of the waves, especially waves with 4 necromancers, you absolutely want to use Arcane Bombs because they help you actually interrupt these shadow bolts, but also so you can stack up all these mobs and you can cleave them down and you can seed them down. Now, of course, in the background, you do see the Mount Hyjal guide from my buddy Cosmophile, and he actually did already finish the Black Temple guide. If you want to check any of those out, they're in the description. Let's move on. The second item is a consumable called the Sulfuron Slammer. Now, this item is really useful because whenever you use it, you actually take a little bit of damage, a dot of damage, where it does 4 damage to you every 3 seconds. And there's no cooldown on using these, and you can trade them, sell them, do whatever you want with them. They are not bind on anything. So how you're going to use these is on the Anatheron fight within Mount Hyjal. This is the second boss, and he will actually do a random sleep ability on 2 to 3 players that is going to be for 10 seconds. Now, the best way to break this sleep is going to be to use this actual item, the Sulfuron Slammer. The main reason you want to use this item over anything else is because it doesn't actually grief you from giving up a trinket slot or anything like that. You can keep pumping the boss and it doesn't really do anything, although it does make your character drunk, and that effect can kind of be really annoying. You can turn off the actual effect, the visual effect for yourself, but you cannot turn off the actual movement effects of your character. When you move them, they will be moving side to side, which is kind of annoying. You can buy this item from the Grim Guzzler within Blackrock Depths, and I've already made a weak aura so you can track the buff on yourself as long as you're using it. So just make sure you grab this weak aura. It's in the Discord channel within the links below. The next 2 items are actually massively useful trinkets for these raids. And the first one is going to be the petrified scarab. This is a trinket from AQ, the raid back all the way in Classic, and this is from the Bug Trio encounter. Now, what it really does is gives you 100 to all resistances for 1 minute. The crazy thing here is it doesn't actually tick away on Mother Shiraz, so you've got a minute of 100 extra resistance. I wouldn't use this as a be-all end-all to get rid of any shadow resistance, but it absolutely means you can wear significantly less, especially if you're pairing it with an item that's coming up a little bit later. Number 4 is another trinket actually from AQ, the raid itself, and this is probably why you see people still running AQ in a lot of the top guilds, but this is going to be the Scarab Brooch, and this drops off of the boss Visitus. The reason you want this item is because on the Reliquary of Souls encounter, the very first boss makes it impossible for you to heal anyone. Basically, he nullifies all healing. But if you're using this trinket, you can actually get heals out and they will just become an absorb shield on the boss. So 15% of your healing will become an absorb shield, which means you can save some of your tanks in case they're gonna die. And if you're struggling with this boss encounter at all, or just even it gets scary at all, this is one trinket that you could use on literally just one healer on this encounter that can make the phase basically trivial, and you'll definitely get it over with. Number 5 is one of my favorite items of all time within this expansion, is the thornling seed. Okay, so we use these thornling seeds to cheese the Lady Vashj encounter because they could be targeted by not only the MCs, but also the poison that drops from this encounter, right? Well, This is also a similar thing we're going to be dealing with in Black Temple. There's two bosses in particular that you can use this on. Mother Shiraz can actually target these thornling seeds for her beam abilities. Not the ability Fatal Attraction, which is the scary one that teleports people all together and you have to run away from each other, but the actual beams themselves, which do quite a bit of damage or do have some interesting effects like draining mana or the knockback or just heavy damage. So these can actually help you if your raid is struggling with the healing or the damage output on this fight, just to eat some of the damage. Quite a bit, to be honest. They will die instantly, but if they're targeted by a beam, it just means someone else is not targeted by a beam and you're saving quite a bit of raid damage. And the second encounter you can use these on is actually gonna be the Illidari Council encounter, which is probably gonna be one of the hardest ones for most people entering into this raid. Now for this encounter, there's multiple abilities that choose a random target and basically put an AoE effect on them or do damage to them. Well, what you can do is place thornling seeds around the walls, and then you can actually fully ignore some of these mechanics, although it will still happen quite a bit throughout the raid. This is a fight where if you're actually struggling with progression, I would 100% advise just bringing an extra healer, because if you do that, I can almost guarantee you'll actually down the fight. The next item is another cheeky one from engineering, and this is actually going to be the Rocket Boots Extreme. Now, if you use these, you can move extremely fast, getting away from whatever's basically DPSing you. These are super useful on the Mother Shiraz fight, and I've actually tested out using 0 shadow resistance on that fight and only using these rocket boots to get away from fatal attractions. And if you want to see that video, you can click that link up in one of those directions. But we're basically going to see some people that are running these raids only to parse, especially on this fight, only using these instead of using any shadow resistance. Now, the interesting thing about these boots is that there's a different version for basically all classes. So for me as a hunter, I do want to have the ones that give you 80 attack power, but for casters, you can get the ones that give you spell damage and whatnot. So make sure you're getting the correct ones. They are BOE, and you do need to be an engineer to be able to use these, but they're extremely useful on this fight, even if you're running as much shadow res as you need to. Now, the last one on this list, number 7, is actually going to be the Phylactery off of Kel'Thuzad, which will give you 2 different trinkets. The melee trinket, the Mark of the Champion, that gives you 150 attack power versus demons and undead. The main thing here is the demons part, and the Mark of the Champion that is also for a caster that gives you 85 static attack power, again versus demons and undead. Now, 150 attack power or 85 attack power is massively strong, and these trinkets can be used throughout huge portions of these raids, especially boss fights. Although I would warn hunters out there to note that the Mark of the Champion with the attack power does not give any attack power or any buffs to your pet, so it's actually not as good as we expected it to be for hunters in particular. But all other melee classes, this trinket is insane, and for all caster classes, this trinket is crazy. I would even say that for prot paladins, this is one of the most insane trinkets in the game. And that wraps things up. That is 7 of the most useful items for you going into Black Temple and Mount Hyjal. I hope you guys learned something new and can take some of this into your actual raids, and it'll help you actually clear these raids. Now, if you don't know, I already have made a guide basically going over exactly how to DPS all of the bosses in Black Temple, and I'm working on the Mount Hyjal one now. But if you want to get 99s right away or parse extremely high right away, min-max any of the fights, I do go over every single one of these encounters, and it's going to show up in a minute. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you have anything else you want me to cover, make sure to let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys all on the next one.